If this one is another girl, don't step into this house again. The words had not been said in anger alone. They carried something colder, something final.
They were spoken like a verdict already decided, like a door already closed. She had held her breath when the labor pains began. Not just from the physical agony, but from fear. Fear that went deeper than pain. Fear of rejection. Fear of disgrace. Fear of becoming exactly what her husband had begun to treat her as, a failure. Hours later, when the cries of a newborn finally filled the hospital room, they were followed by silence. The nurse smiled gently, placing the baby in her arms. A beautiful baby girl. The words should have been a blessing. Instead, they became a sentence. Her husband did not look at the child. He did not ask if she was healthy. He did not care that both mother and baby had survived. His face twisted in fury, his pride crushed under the weight of expectations he had built on a fragile belief.
5 girls, he shouted, his voice echoing through the sterile hospital walls. You have ruined me. You are cursed.
Cursed. The word clung to her like a stain no water could wash away. By nightfall, she was no longer a wife. No longer welcome. No longer protected. She stood outside the house she once called home, her body still weak from childbirth. A baby in her arms, 4 daughters clinging to her wrapper. The door slammed behind her, not just a door of wood, but the door to everything she had known. The rain began as a whisper, then grew into a storm. With nowhere to go, she found shelter in an uncompleted building, a skeleton of concrete and iron rods reaching into the dark sky. No windows, no doors, no warmth. Just cold cement and the relentless sound of rain hitting the earth. She gathered her daughters close, wrapping them in what little fabric she had. The baby whimpered softly, her tiny body trembling against her chest. I'm here, she whispered, though her voice shook. I'm here. But she wasn't sure if it was enough. The rain fell for hours. It seeped into her bones, into her thoughts, into her spirit. Each drop seemed to echo the voices she had tried to ignore for years. Beauty does not cook soup. They had said it in her village, mocking her when she married a man who seemed too good to be true. She had believed she had escaped those words, that she had proven them wrong. But as she sat on that cold floor, holding 5 daughters against the storm, she realized something painful. They had not been entirely wrong. The next morning did not bring relief. It brought reality. Hunger, fear, responsibility. There was no husband to return to, no family rushing to save her, no miracle waiting at the corner. Just a choice. Survive or disappear. She chose to survive. The transformation did not happen overnight, but it began with a decision. She folded away her dresses, the ones that once made her feel soft, admired, feminine. In their place, she wore jean trousers. Strong, practical, unforgiving. She tied a bandana around her head, not as a fashion statement, but as armor. Then she stepped into the world that did not wait for the weak the Lagos bus parks. Chaos greeted her like an old friend. Engines roared, conductors shouted, passengers pushed and argued. The air smelled of sweat, fuel, and survival. When she first tried to enter that space, the laughter came quickly. Woman, go and sell tomatoes. This work will break you. You no fit, survive here. Their words stung, but not as much as the memory of her daughters' empty stomachs. So she stayed. The first days were the hardest. Her voice cracked as she tried to shout roots. Her body ached from standing all day. Her hands, once soft, blistered and bled. But pain became her teacher. She learned how to call out destinations louder than the men, how to move quickly between buses, how to collect fares without being cheated, how to stand her ground when challenged. Her voice changed, it lost its softness, gaining a rough edge that commanded attention. Her eyes changed too. They became sharp, watchful, unafraid. The park boys stopped laughing. Some even stepped aside. They called her stubborn, difficult, bad character. They didn't know that what they saw as hardness was simply survival. Every coin she earned had a purpose: food, shelter, school fees. She refused to let her daughters inherit her suffering. Even when exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders, she pushed forward. Even when memories threatened to break her, she held on. Even when the world showed her no mercy, she gave her daughters everything she could. There was one loss she never spoke about. One child who did not survive that first stormy night. That memory became her silent fire. While she fought in the bus parks, her former husband lived a different story. He had eventually gotten what he wanted: a son, a child he believed would carry his name, his pride, his legacy. But life does not always follow expectations. The boy grew, but not into what he had imagined. He refused discipline. He rejected learning. He destroyed more than he built. The house that once stood firm began to crack, not physically, but in peace, in order, in purpose. Meanwhile, the daughters he had rejected were rising. One by one, they excelled in school. Their mother's sacrifices became their motivation. They studied under dim lights, shared books, and held on to a single belief their mother repeated often: hard work never lies. Years passed. What began as survival turned into progress. What seemed impossible became reality. University admissions came. Degrees followed. Opportunities opened. And slowly, the world began to notice. Her story spread not as gossip, but as inspiration. A woman who had been thrown out with nothing but children and pain had built something extraordinary. She was invited to speak, to share, to stand as proof that resilience could rewrite destiny. Recognition came not as charity, but as respect. The same society that once overlooked her now celebrated her. The same kind of people who once would have pitied her now applauded her strength. She was no longer defined by rejection. She had become a symbol of triumph. Then one day, the past returned. He stood at her gate, not as the man she once knew, but as a shadow of him. His shoulders were slumped. His eyes carried regret. His voice trembled. "I threw away diamonds," he said, tears streaming down his face. "Please, forgive me." Time seemed to pause. For a moment, she saw the man he used to be, the life she once imagined, the dreams that had died. But she also saw the nights in the cold, the hunger, the struggle, the strength it took to rebuild everything from nothing. She stood tall, not in anger, but in clarity. "God remembered me," she said quietly. "But this palace I built has no room for someone who only loves when it is convenient." Her words were not cruel. They were final. He had lost more than a wife. He had lost a future. As he walked away, broken and silent, she turned back toward the life she had built, a life filled with dignity, strength, and peace. Her daughters stood as living proof of her journey, each one a pillar, each one a victory. And in that moment, the irony of destiny revealed itself fully. The stone that had been rejected had not only survived, it had become the cornerstone of an empire no one could destroy.